So the Summer Games Fest was over the weekend and I feel very down in the dumps, like a lot of people do, because they were waiting for the, hopefully, shadow dropped Arc Raiders. Embark, the studio, previously shadow dropped the finals. Excellent game, by the way. And they previously shadow dropped it at the Summer Games Fest. So people were kind of expecting that Arc Raiders was going to drop. Not only that, there was a ARG released by Embark that led to a countdown timer that was ending during the Summer Games Festival. So everyone's like, yeah, it's coming. The technical tests went really well. The feedback form had questions like, is the game ready? It was universally received very well. Arc Raiders coming hot off the heels of Marathon not doing very well in their alpha test. And even like hardcore community in the extraction shooter genre loving it. People from Tarkov saying this game is great. It's ready to roll. Let's go, baby. The announcement was probably personally the worst possible outcome that could have happened for myself. I've got baby number 2 due on October 15th, and the game is announced to release on October 30th. I have no idea how I am going to manage that, but we will see. Stay tuned. There is more to this story though. There has been a couple responses since the release. There's obviously been a fair bit of community backlash to it as well. A lot of people claiming, not claiming, people saying that you've ruined the hype, you've made a mistake. And I think one of the big surprises was that it's after Marathon. It's after the release of Marathon. And I truly did not think that they would release after Marathon. So I want to get to talking about that as well. But there's a couple other things to cover first. Spoken about the expectations. The expectations was it was probably going to release. There was radio silence. There was an ARG. The finals previously released. So the studio has some track history with, shadow dropping games. And the game seemed like a complete product. There was lots of aspects of the game that looked like they were complete. Now, obviously, when it wasn't released, they did release an apology. And I think it's worth reading through this. So this is on their Discord. Let me read it to you. It says, "Hello Raiders. In the lead up to the Arc Raiders date reveal, we put on a countdown to June 6th. This gave the false impression that we would be shadow dropping the game. Instead, you found out that Arc Raiders is coming on October 30th, making it a countdown to a countdown. The frustration and disappointment that followed is 100% our fault. The teaser we posted came from a place of genuine excitement. We finally have an actual date. But it's clear that what we saw as playful and hype building came across as misleading and frustrating to many of you, and we get why. We mismanaged the hype, we misread the situation, and we're sorry that this led to disappointment. We're making this game for you, and your reaction to Arc Raiders has been humbling and overwhelming and exciting. Next steps. We're putting our heads down and focusing on building the game. We know that the games live and die by polish and quality, balance and long-term fun. We need this additional time to ensure we can meet your expectations. Look here and on socials for updates on our progress and the road to launch. Thank you for holding us to a high standard. We intend to meet it, Dusty and the Arc Raiders team." A pretty good apology, and to be fair, I think they really do understand what happened here. Sometimes it's rare for developers to see this side. I definitely understand where they're coming from. Like, this is the thing though. So many developers have done this. Like, they're working on a game, like they're hyped for the announcement. And I think it is hard for them to realize that we don't want to count down to a countdown. We're hyped for the game to come out. But I definitely see it from like a developer's point of view. You've been working on this game for bloody ever. You're hyped to announce it, right? And that like excitedness of the studio, you can see how you end up doing a countdown to a countdown. I'm glad that they took a step back and recognized that how it was interpreted and realized that this was going to go the other way. And potentially, maybe they didn't think it was going to happen like that because maybe they didn't expect the game to be this big, but it ended up blowing up. It ended up being really huge, and they probably needed to take a step back and realize people are going to think that it was going to be shadow dropped. Regardless, I think it's a good apology. I think it's hit the nail on the head. I also think that it's half, maybe not half. There is some fault on gamers for having the expectation to be so high as well, but I really, like, I put this in my head as like 80% chance this is dropping. I took the weekend off from family. I was like, Danny, I'm sorry. This game's coming out. We need the money. I love the game. People love watching the game. I like making content in the game. I haven't felt this passion in a long time. And I think a lot of people felt like that too. Like, I haven't felt excited about a video game in ages. Please, please, please. Right. Now, there is a little bit more to talk about here. The CEO, I think the CEO did a press release, which has some interesting stuff in it as well, which we'll have a look at. So this is an article by PC Gamer, authored by Morgan Park, published a couple days ago. And the executive producer Alexander released a press release. This has got some interesting things in it. Let me read this to you. The tech test was the best rehearsal we could get. Ahead of what's shaping up as a big release this fall, it's clear the players recognize the passion, effort, and craftsmanship that's been poured into the making of Arc Raiders, said executive producer Alexander in a press release. The test also honed in on concrete things we're addressing in this last stretch of development. There are bugs to squash, as well as general polish and performance improvements to be done. We're also fine-tuning game balance and the player economy, and we'll work on an even better onboarding experience for players who come in new to this genre. At release, the game will be further expanded with more locations to explore, more adventures to embark on, and for more players to strive towards and discover. I think this kind of talk is crazy because the amount of polish that was already in the game, the amount of features that were already in the game felt good. And I think this is where it's an interesting comparison now to Marathon. Of course, we don't know what stage of the game we played in Marathon. You know, that's always kind of the big unknown with Marathon. Like, at what level did we play the alpha and how much, was already done, and how much time does Marathon have to complete before a September release? And then Arc Raiders came along as an almost complete product. And the executive producer is talking about adding more locations, which, by the way, Arc Raiders already had 3 locations. They had nighttime versions of those locations. And they had essentially like rotating timed limited events as well, which really changed how a lot of the maps play. The fact that they're looking at giving more maps would be insanely solid for release. I didn't really expect there to be more maps until maybe their first update, their first season or something like that. But to have more than 3 maps and more than 3 like nighttime modes, like if they release with 5 maps or something, that is like a super, super solid entry. Other thing I think is interesting, talking about these more adventures to embark on and more things for players to strive for. There definitely was very minor criticism about like having items to really go for. One of the most exciting things were like the crafting blueprints that you could get, especially from like the big puzzles with the big bosses, with the Queen and the Harvester. They released like exotic like blueprints, like sniper rifles and cool looking weapons. But once you got the blueprint, there wasn't a huge amount of other loot that you got really excited for. So maybe they're looking at that. And the other thing is, I think if they double down on those like essentially dungeon/raid puzzles in the game and can add more and have more of those surprises, like Arc Raiders is just so far ahead already. And it very much seems like they're putting the nail in the coffin, right, for Marathon. Like, I don't know, and this is where we can get Twitch chat and YouTube chat's opinion on this. Releasing after Marathon, for me, indicates and signifies that they are not threatened by Marathon at all. And I think there is some danger to that. Bungie has consistently shown that when their back is against the wall, they have pulled the rabbit out of the hat. Bungie has been on death's door multiple times. Bungie has admitted they have been close to shutting the studio down and they needed a win. And in those times, they have got the win. Like a boxing fight, like an MMA fight, I don't think you can ever count the underdog out. There is some risk, but I think Arc Raiders shows how confident they are that they are just not even concerned with Marathon. And I think if you had a look at I actually never spoke about Marathon's live stream. I was too busy making other content, but the way Marathon and Bungie were talking about the updates to Marathon, they were heading in the right direction, but for me, it was still like, do you have time to implement all this? And they were still dancing around proximity chat, which I think is the wrong way to go as well. But a lot of actually my big issues with Marathon, they were talking about it, but my main concern was, could Marathon even get this stuff done in time? And that's a big unknown. Regardless, I am very surprised that they, in my mind, they had the hype train, they had the advantage, and I thought they would release before Marathon and try to gobble up some of that audience. The opposite is true. They're like, Arc already has the formula. Arc already has all the components working. And they're kind of talking like they're going to add more, they're going to polish more. And for me, that sounds like them going, we're going to put the nail in the Marathon coffin. Pretty much. Like, Marathon now needs to not just be okay to even be relevant to Arc Raiders, but it can't even just rely on being a first-person shooter. And that was already the case between the alpha release and Arc Raiders playtesters. People that loved first-person shooters were still enjoying Arc Raiders. Like, they can't even rely on it just being a first-person shooter, extraction shooter. Then they need something more to it as well. There you go. I'm still very excited about Arc Raiders. It's going to be a stressful time in my life. Newborn baby. If you tune into Arc Raiders streams and I have a baby strapped to me and I'm talking like this, okay, guys, yeah, well, let's go down here. Like, I can't yell. That's what's happening. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And also, I've got 4 months of thinking about content to do. So I've been thinking of doing these little opinion pieces like Mylin's Moaning Minutes, which I used to do. And we'll call it Mylin's Mortgage Minutes to try and pay me mortgage until Arc Raiders comes out. All right. Like and comment. We greatly appreciate it. All right. See you next time. Bye-bye.